What is going on, ladies and germs of YouTube? This is Christian Hannah Horror, and I've got a really cool guest today. A guy that it was just funny. We were just saying before we went live, we talk all the time, but we've never actually done a video call together or anything. So it
No.
is fresh. Like we
Yeah.
like we haven't really met or anything, which is just weird to think about because I feel like I know you, Shawn.
Yeah, I know,
You
man.
know.
Mutual. Mutual.
So Shawn is a man that wears many sleeves. Shawn is a Beavis and Butthead enthusiast. Shawn is the Critters fan. I don't even want to say a Critters fan. I want to say he's just, the Critters fan. And I got so many questions about so many things in your collection. Number one, but I really want to take it back. Okay, so where did it begin for you with Critters? Where did the love start? That's what because I've never asked you that.
Critters for me is like completely intertwined with nostalgia for the video rental store. That's like when I was little, maybe like 6 to 7, my parents actually split up for a bit, and my mom had a hair salon that she worked at that was kind of across the street and through a parking lot from a video rental store. And I'd have to hang out at her place for like an entire 8-hour shift. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so instead of doing that, I'd go hang out at the video rental store for her entire 8-hour shift. And Critters was like, I was afraid of horror movies, but I was super intrigued. And like you'd go down the horror section and you'd get like that feeling of like you just keep walking past, but look just enough because you are super intrigued by the cover art and stuff.
Right.
And I checked out Gremlins at a really young age, and that was like my safety gateway into horror. But then I ended up going for Critters, probably because I, seemed like another safety one. And something about Critters I really latched onto so hard. I became so obsessed with the cover art for part 2 with the giant critter ball.
Oh man.
I love VHS cover art. That's such a thing with DVD. Like cover art started to just like go downhill for horror movies once DVD hit for some reason. But yeah, and I mean the lady who worked at the video rental store was a little old lady, and she let me select one movie a day to put on, and it was always Critters or Critters 2. So there's just, yeah, it's like a big nostalgia burst for me. That video store was connected to a DNV actually, and some old man was coming to renew his license, and he like drove all the way into the video rental store. Like seriously, like
Good Lord.
domino affected all the aisles.
Jesus.
And that's the first time I got in the newspaper.
Well, that's one way to get in.
Yeah. But as far as Critters, I don't know, man. When I love something, I love it. And
let me segue. I want to get real quick into your knowledge about the movies because I've got questions, and I know that the people that end up watching this may find some of this stuff out. So, when I was first watching this movie, I was doing a little bit of research on this and that. Now, the story about Billy Idol, was it a notion of Billy didn't like the movie, or did Billy not want more money, or what happened? Because the story was that they were supposed to have Billy Idol as the song in the band in the movie. Am I right?
I think that is more or less just what they hoped for, and I think they kind of gave up. The
producers,
on it, right? Yeah, I don't think they ever even really approached him about it. I think they gave up on that before. And they just knew it was going to be so far out of the budget, because what was this movie probably being filmed in 84, 85? And Billy Idol is like oh man, could you imagine how much it would have cost them to get him?
Yeah, because he had to have been at the prime of his career. He had to have been just coming off a Rebel Yell or White Wedding, either one of the two. So
he was on MTV with Cyndi Lauper like nonstop. I mean, I wasn't even born yet, but I for some reason know stuff.
So the song "The Power of the Night," I never heard, the only time I ever heard the song brought up in conversation before talking to you about it was, I believe it was James. I don't know if you know who the Angry Video Game Nerd is. I'm sure you do.
Big fan.
Most people
Big
do.
fan.
Okay, excellent. And he made a comment like, the song Power in the Night is an incredibly bad, good song. And I was like, what does that mean? And I listened to the song, and my blissful, ignorant mind absolutely loved the band. What was the band's name in the movie? It was
That's a good question. I always forget that, actually. I bet my buddy Chris couldn't even answer that right now. God, it's funny. Well, he's Johnny Steele.
Johnny Steele. Johnny Steele.
Yeah, but but was there actually a band name when they list it in the corner of the music video, or is it just Johnny Steele?
That's what I can't remember. I don't know if you have the answers for these, but
if you just be Johnny Steele.
Yeah. If you don't, I don't know anybody does. Who actually performed the song? Was it one guy in the studio? Did all the parts? Who did the vocals? You know, do you know the story behind that? Because I'm interested, because I genuinely, I love the song. As you can see, I haven't shown a whole lot of people.
A great cover of it.
Thank you. I never really advertised it too, because I didn't figure anybody would care. But I did tell you, I was like, hey, dude, I did this. I did a cover of the song, and I couldn't wait, because I plan on doing a Critters 2 for Surviving the Sequels. I plan on doing Critters for Cult Classics. I want to talk about the movies, especially 3, because I really like 3. And I was like, I can't wait. I've got to go ahead and just put my little cover in there just to see. And nobody ever comments on that stuff. You know, they just, I guess when you kind of do stuff and have original music in your videos, they just kind of expect it. So they don't take the, not that I expect anyone to take the time to say, hey, Christian, good cover of that. But I knew you would appreciate it. So
maybe I've been following you long enough, because I think there was a point where you didn't really incorporate music too much. And then when you started, I could tell that it was like a re-recording and stuff. And then I finally figured out that you were, well, I knew you were a musician. I knew your band, and I checked it out and I liked it and stuff. But then I realized, like, you must have the means. What do you have, drum machines?
Is
that what you normally do?
On my Mac, I use my interface is just GarageBand. I got a newer version of GarageBand, which is good enough, you know, for what I do.
Right.
And
so it is program drums, anyways.
For drums, basically, I do it on a keyboard. You know, the S will be the kick drum, and I'm pretty good, because I've been doing that for a couple of years now. So you could tell.
No, I used to do it too. Fruity Loops. Do you remember that program?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I did all that too. But no, but what I would really like to compliment you on is all your horror synth music that you've been doing recently, because I am such a sucker for that type of stuff, that 80s. I don't know if I want to call it synthwave. It's just horror synth to me. And it's a very vague term, because you can go from like John Carpenter, like atmospheric, to like heavy, like Boogeyman soundtrack synth and stuff like that. But I love that. I've told you a few times, but you need to release an album of just your horror synth, man. I freaking love it.
And I don't know if I ever told you this, but I have an album's worth of material, original material, and I just never got the guts to do it. I need it, because I worry, like, nobody's gonna want to buy this. And I was telling myself, well, Christian, just put it on Spotify. Don't even put it on iTunes. Just put it on Spotify for people to hear. But what I really want to do is take all the I'll call them demos. And my brother has a studio, a really nice studio. And I want to take the demos over there. He's in the Carolinas, and I'd like to take a week off of work, go up there, and just really record everything I've done in a more professional setting. That's what I really want to do, because some of the stuff is pretty good.
You talk about
all the horror material. Yeah, man.
Wow. Yeah,
strictly horror material.
I think you should press it on vinyl. Shit, I put on an 8-track for you.
I wish. I want mini disc.
Nah, man.
I want to give a shout out real quick. We got Count Von Strange out there, Ryan OG, and Slasher Pepper, who's a good buddy of mine. I've met him from the YouTube world, and he's got a video he wants me to do that I'm prepping that now. So Shawn, I want to get into your music. You are officially or semi-retired. What would you say?
I'm retired.
Fully retired? Okay. I want to start kind of from ground zero with this, because there's going to be some people that haven't heard you. What you do, first off, what is the genre of what you do called?
I mean, just to make it less confusing for everyone, it's just noise, harsh noise, probably.
Is it? I like the phrase anti-music. Is that wrong of me to
No, I
say?
would say that's more accurate.
Okay,
Yeah.
so where did you first hear this? Are you a pioneer of this yourself? Like, what's
No,
the
not at
story?
all. I mean, honestly, the way I got into it, it's kind of a funny story, but like in the early 2000s, well, like the year 2000, I joined a band and it was like a new metal cover band. You know what I mean by new metal, of course, like
Sure.
rap metal. Yeah. Um, and there were bands like Chimera and Slipknot, and they all had a dude with a sampler. And all that they really did was just hit buttons and trigger a bunch of weird noises that complemented the actual band's music. And so I joined that band. I was doing like screaming and stuff, but they kind of had a lead singer. So I went on my way. I was pretty young. I got a sampler and I started learning how to just make noises. And I got really into it, and I ended up leaving that band because I don't really like being in bands, to be honest with you. And I started just making noise on that sampler and like screaming lyrics over it, and it eventually just progressed or degressed, however, to the point where I would just plug a microphone into a guitar amp and just have like, because microphone feedback at its highest pitch, in my opinion, you can't get worse than that. Like I was always trying to make, like when I started, I would make really like Texas Chainsaw Massacre soundtrack would be a good example. Where it's like an atmosphere and there's ambience. And a lot of people would probably say that stuff was better. Um, but it was hard to make that interesting live. And all I wanted to do live, especially when I started, sorry, I have a train going by. I don't know if it'll interrupt it, but I would just,
Oh, New Yorker.
what's that?
Old New Yorker. Got them trains
Oh
out there.
yeah, yeah. I got a train depot like right outside my window, literally.
No, I can hear you fine now.
um, no one was going to book that around here, So, because I'm not in New York City, by the way, I'm like near Buffalo, and I'm in
Right.
cow country where I actually grew up. So I would go out to like Buffalo area, like an hour away, and I would, there was a show happening. So I would just, while the one band was breaking down, I would start setting up my gear as if I was that next band, and I would just plug in my noise and just go out and start pretty much like attacking the crowd and scream my words out. And it would turn into, somebody would fight me, the cops would get called. Um, you've probably seen the video of where I broke my leg and I couldn't get away, and the guy's cursing me out there.
I've got the video memorized, like
Yeah,
everything that happens. And I never told you this, but I just found the video. It was like an old YouTube channel of yours or something. And I saw this video and I watched it and my jaw dropped because I couldn't believe what you got on camera, or whoever filmed this, what they got on camera, because it's hard to watch, not in a cringe way, but it's like, it's real. I mean, that's what's
yeah,
it's like, damn, this guy's mad, you know?
yeah. That dude was pissed. Um, well, well, I went off the stage and my kneecap actually went to like the underside back of my leg, and
Wow.
all my ligaments got torn out. So I was bedridden for like 6 months, and that guy tried to sue me. I mean, there was always some sort of shit after, sorry, some sort of stuff after a show where because what I was doing was very rude. I'm not going to justify it. And there were a lot of shows where I would get pummeled, like I'm a big guy, but I can't take on four people. And I would just get it handed to me. But I totally had it coming. And then, but I don't know why I was doing this. I just, yeah, I guess anti music. And you know, I would get reactions. I remember one in particular in the beginning. This guy came up and I made everybody mad at this venue except this one guy. And he comes up and he's like, "Man, I come to this bar 3 times a week and watch bands. And man, you just broke up the monotony. That was awesome." And that was really nice. But then somewhere around 2012, the video, people started recording it and it would get put on YouTube. And then I think it kind of started where I played this one venue in Rochester, New York, and I got kicked out. But the sound guy really thought it was funny. And he remembered me years later and, found my Facebook, and he contacts me and he's like, "Hey, I'm the promoter at that venue now. And I got
Yeah.
like this show tonight, and all the bands on it are just like the biggest smug douchebags. And it'd just be so awesome if you came and ruined the show."
Oh my God.
And I was like, wow, I just like kind of got booked. And I went and I ruined that show to the point where, like, the bands, two of them left. They were so upset. And, it was a good time. And then from there, it got to the point where I was going out to other states, and people were like Detroit, Michigan, uh, asking me to come out and like headline these festivals. But as for the question that you were going for there, no, I didn't create noise. That started honestly way back in the early like 1900s, if you really want to get into it. But as far as like electronic artists going like too far into like kind of avant-garde and like mean for the sake of mean, and this isn't what you listen to type stuff. I would
Right.
say the late 70s. You credit Yoko Ono and John Lennon a bit, but an artist called Whitehouse um, definitely originated the sound that I more or less am
Okay.
going for, and that was in the late 70s. But I didn't find out about noise for quite a few years into doing it. I did think that I was doing something unique because I grew up in the country. I didn't really have the internet too
Right.
quick and whatnot.
Exactly.
And so I'm doing it and doing my thing, and then I get online, and then I discover, and then I start educating myself, and then I become fans of other noise artists and whatnot, and take inspiration. And the first two noise artists that I really like got into, I have both opened for me at this point, because once I play, the whole venue's ruined. No one will really go on after me. And the one, when I told him, I was like, "You're one of my first two noise artists I ever listened to." You could just see it on his face that he was so insulted, like he'd heard about me, and he's like, "Oh," he's kind of like, "Oh God, I inspired this guy, man."
That's perfect.
Yeah. So then a year later, I get to, play with the other dude. Um, and I come up to him and I go, "You know what, man, you were my first noise CD." And he looks at me and he goes, "Really?" He goes, "Man, I brought an umbrella for your set tonight." So it was like the two guys I
Wow.
got into, one loves it and one absolutely hates it. And that, I don't know, that was some closure for me when I really thought about that in hindsight after I stopped the project like 2 months ago. Like, I must have
Wow.
done something right.
Right.
Because you definitely shouldn't, not
Definitely.
everyone should love it and not everyone should hate it. That's definitely for
From
sure.
an outsider's perspective, I see the people, man, they love what you do, and I just think that's great because it just seems so pure what you're doing, man. It
Thank
seems
you.
exactly opposite of what's going on today, which is so refreshing to me. I want to talk more about your music, but I want to get to we did have a question. This comes from Dan Chalice, and I don't know if it's the actual Dan Chalice. You very well could be. This is off topic, but Shawn, I want to get your answer as well on this because this is what we do here on Christian Horror. Hey,
Oh, yeah.
Christian, love to know your favorite Jason mask look. I still got to stick with Manhattan. I like that gold look. I like the way it looked on that. I really like the way it looked on that swampy look of Jason. But I tell you what, man, that New Beginning mask with them blue chevrons, it's to me, it's as iconic as anything. So probably a tie between those two. But Shawn, what's your favorite Jason mask
Dude,
look?
for me, it's kind of a trick question, because I think my favorite look of Jason is the one where his jawline is exposed, but that's not the mask. That's more like the whole package. And I think my favorite mask is Roy Burns, but that's not Jason.
Right.
So, uh,
Yeah, we're getting tricky.
yeah, man. Yeah, yeah. Gosh. The part 5 cover.
Absolutely. I took out my NECA today, matter of fact. And I took out it's the NECA they did of part 5, except it's not Roy, excuse me. It's the beginning of part 5 where they're digging Jason up and then he stabs the guy, and I was displaying.
yeah.
I'm rearranging, as you saw. I'm rearranging the horror room, and I got all these new shelves and stuff. And those NECA Ultimates, they're great, but Jesus, they're horrible for real estate in a collection because they're just this bulky boxes. And what do you do with them? So I was like, well, I want to do something where I can maybe turn them sideways on a shelf, and I can take the figures out and I can pose them. So I took a couple out, and I took that Jason out, the apparition Jason from part 5. And I said, well, let me display him and see what he's got. And he had the little headstone. And then I looked and I was like, wait a minute, what is that? And they actually put the a head with the mask. That's the cover art of the original image of that. So I was like, well, let me put that head on. I'll take a picture of that for Instagram and show it. So yeah.
Yes, please do. That is really cool.
Yeah,
I definitely still didn't give the best answer, but he never wore that in any of the movies, and I don't think too many people would have liked it if he did, but I like that mask. There's a movie called Alone in the Dark from the 80s, and it's about a bunch of insane asylum guys that break out, and one of them's key is that he bleeds from his nose and he never talks, and when they get out, he ends up finding a hockey mask, and it is that hockey mask from the part 5 cover. I want to say this movie came out the same year as Friday the 13th part 3. It's a total coincidence. There were 2 slashers with hockey masks that year, but I don't think too many people are familiar with Alone in the Dark.
I don't think I am either. I know the name, but I've never seen it. I do know that there is a terribly, terribly good bad movie called Bloody Murder. And they used the pseudo hockey mask on the cover of Friday 5. And then when they went to go do the sequel, I'm guessing Paramount, somebody at Paramount saw this movie as low budget as it was and said, hey, you guys can't do that stuff, because the sequel, they give them a blank white masks. So,
okay.
But Dan Chalice says part 7, but you're right. The Roy mask is underrated. And then Slasher 101 says, I've been opening up those Ultimates as well, Christian. They look good displayed. Yeah, they do look good displayed. You know, at a certain point, I tell myself, what good are these doing just in the boxes? Like, I got to take some of them. I'm not going to sell this stuff.
Like, there's almost like a book cover covering it up too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
At a certain point, I say, Christian, you got to open some of these up, because, you know, I have the San Diego Comic-Con Jason that they did in 2013. It's their game, Jason. That's not coming out the box, because that's a collector's item. But, you know, the other ones, it's just like, Christian, what are you going to sell these for? And if you do, you're not going to get rich off of them. Display some of these suckers. So I'm trying to, I'm trying to take some up, and they're just so bulky. So I'm trying to do something with the packaging. So I love NECA. I love NECA, but their packaging is a pain in the butt sometimes. It really is.
I do too. And also, they've responded to me a few times on Instagram. They're just like really nice, because I found these Beavis and Butthead bobbleheads that I'm assuming are prototypes. So I was trying to contact all the people that may have made them, and they actually like gave me a tip. It wasn't a good tip, but they actually responded to me, man. NECA is really,
they're good. They're real good people. So let's stick with horror for a second. Shawn,
absolutely.
So tell me, I hate to put you on the spot, but give me what's some of your favorite horror movies recently, or something that you've watched, or what's a franchise that maybe you and me haven't really talked about? Because when I think of you, I instantly think of 2 things. I think of Beavis and Butthead, and I think of Critters. But what else? You know, scratches your itch or whatever. What's one of your favorite? Is Friday the 13th? Would you say that's one of your favorite franchises?
Yes, but I am actually just more of like a diehard fan of the first one. I love I love Jason. I definitely choose him over Freddy, but there's something about the first one. I actually like the characters. I'm not talking about the Kevin Bacon guy. What's the first girl's name that gets her throat slashed against the tree?
The name, to be quite honest with you, Shawn, that's the one I have the respect and admiration for the first one, but that's one I typically skip that one. And not in a demeaning way. It's just I don't know. I don't watch.
When it comes to horror, man, I like visually stimulating, almost like artsy in a way, and that's why I like Friday the 13th. I think of scenes at the end where Alice is in the boat and that music. I love a good soundtrack. That is just one of the most beautiful, like the color scheme and everything about that is so gorgeous. Um, Not so much that it's an entertaining movie, it is relaxing, and I can put it on over and over again because I like how so many of the scenes look, and the scenes that matter really, really are awesome. I, and then on the other end of the spectrum, I go straight to like Critters and Gremlins and Little Monster movies and just like the pure ridiculous kind of almost because those, like I was saying earlier, those were the safe horror movies for me when I was a kid because I was too afraid to watch the Freddy Krueger movie until I got to a certain age and stuff. So I really latched onto the little monsters because even though they're killing people, I guess there's like this little instinct as a boy of like, yeah, but if I met one, it'd be my pet, you know?
That's
So,
interesting. So were you an
yeah.
easy scare as a kid?
Oh, hell yeah,
You know,
dude.
would your
Tuffy was my biggest fear, which is insane because now I like sleep with him right next to my face.
right?
Do you remember My Buddy Dolls?
I'm too young to have lived it, but
Yeah.
I know what they are, and
Okay.
it's
My
no coincidence. It's no coincidence. Real quick, I want to bring this up. I'm assuming it's no coincidence that the remake for Child's Play is using Buddy Dolls in reference to the original My Buddy Dolls, right?
I do like that.
And I don't think
Honestly,
people realize that. Some people my age, for instance, I don't think because I'm 27, so I was born in '92, so it was My Buddy Dolls were before me a little bit. But I don't
yeah,
think people realize that. They just think, "Oh, what's a buddy doll? That's so stupid." And I'm saying, no. You don't get it. Like, that's
no.
really what Chucky was originally supposed to be in
Right.
the
Like Tom
beginning.
Mancini always says that it was the Cabbage Patch, which I'm sure the inspiration for their phenomenon was, but I don't think he wants to say the My Buddy doll because it looks too much like the My Buddy doll. He
Sure.
might even get sued all these years later if he finally admits that on paper.
Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, was I an easy scare? Hell yeah, dude. Everything scared me. And you know why everything scared me, to be honest with you, is because I was too afraid to watch it and I would only look at the cover art. And your imagination is so much worse than what any of those movies actually are. I realized when I went back as an adult and watched some of them, you know? Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, like the Pennywise movie. I only saw maybe 30 seconds of that. Candyman. I only saw the one scene with the little kid in the bathroom, and we turned it on at that moment. I had my mom turn it off at the end of that moment, and then, well, you know, Candyman actually is a scary movie compared to Freddy Krueger and stuff, in my opinion.
I think it's one of the
Uh,
greatest '90s horror movies. I really do. I tell
yeah,
people I got to go on
yeah.
a mini rant for a second. It's not a rant, excuse me. I did a review on Candyman, and I said if I truly think that Tony Todd's performance
Mm.
arguably could
Mwah.
be as on the same level as the Anthony Anthony Perkins in Silence of the
Oh,
Lamb.
sure,
Not
sure.
Perkins, Anthony Hopkins, excuse me. I
Yeah,
get the names confused. Perkins, because Tony Todd, I mean, wow. I mean, because you're gonna get this remake coming out from Candyman with Jordan Peele, which I don't have
oh
a
yeah,
problem with Jordan Peele. Jordan
yeah,
Peele's earned my respect as a horror fan because he
yeah.
really is a horror
Well,
fan.
especially as a comedian too, love him.
You know, I can anticipate the new Candyman being a product of post production. The voice will be altered much. He'll be a Candyman of shadows and cinematography. They just rolled the camera on Tony Todd, and he was horrifying. I mean, he really was.
Yeah,
He had the way he just carried himself. You know, that's a
yeah.
fantastic movie. But I'm sorry, go ahead. But yeah, I just love Candyman. I think
No, I
it's
do too, and I kind of want to stay on it even. If it wasn't for the fact that Jordan Peele was making it, I would be kind of putting my foot down and being like, this doesn't need to happen. But I think he's the type of dude who can actually bring something to the table with Candyman. But am I? There's no way he can make me like it better than the original because I hold that movie just a little too high. I think for
right.
even if the remake's better, I'm not going to like it better. I think just a little bit of bias. Yeah, I love it.
I'd like to see him take some risks, do something different with the story. Maybe take it out of Cabrini Green. Maybe just do
He seems like the
justify.
dude that would.
Yeah, just justify what you're gonna do. But that's the thing, man. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because if Jordan Peele just kind of retells the story, people are gonna say, "Why was the point of this?" It's the same thing. And if he does a lot of different things, it's like, well, this isn't Candyman. We know what happened with Rob Zombie, and I don't need to get into that because I get very aggravated. I'm not a huge Rob Zombie Halloween fan, but I tell people nobody was going to like a remake no matter what with them. So it's not his fault. It's Miramax's fault if you don't like the movie because they wanted a Rob Zombie movie.
I look at Rob Zombie's Halloween as if he would have just not called it Halloween. Kind of like because what's his first movie there? House of a Thousand Corpses is just a remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre if they would have called it.
That's a good example, because if as long as you give it its own identity, it's like people will accept it more. And I tell people all the time when they ask me about Rob Zombie, I say Rob Zombie is I don't know if you want to call him a horror master, but I think he's a master at what he does. And I think House of a Thousand is one of the best horror movies of my generation. I love it more than Devil's Rejects. I love it. House of a Thousand is a pure, just for the love of filmmaking horror movie. I just love it. And House of a Thousand Corpses. And that's the interesting thing is a lot of horror fans are okay with that movie and Devil's Rejects. They just don't like his Halloween, but that's because Halloween fans.
Halloween. Yeah. Because I love one of the scariest things in the world to me is little kids who kill. That's why all my artwork always had that Mary Bell. She was a little girl who killed people. Halloween, Rob Zombie's movie, I freaking adore it because it is about a kid who comes from a bad childhood. And I mean, we're kind of at that point when that movie came out, we're just coming a few years out of the Columbine and all that terrible stuff. And it's an interesting psychology to get into.
Right.
But because we slapped the name Halloween on it, we have to compare it to Halloween, and then it gets completely lost. I just forget that it's a Halloween movie most of the time, and I love it.
And that's a good way to go about it. I want to say hey to RD Zombie out in the chat, Slasher 101. Matt M says he opened up all his stuff, but regrets it because everything was neat and organized in the cases. I know the feeling, but he goes, now I got a million cases, accessories around. And Austin Willcutt, how are you guys doing? If you have any questions for me or Shawn, please feel free to drop them in, and it don't matter what we're talking about. We'll stop and answer any and all questions. So Shawn, let me ask you back to your music for a second, because this is really a question for me. And I'm going to assume something, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong. When you create music, I would your songs, if you will, I would assume a lot of them are by accident, the sounds you make. I mean, because I don't see how you can myself see you wake up and say, okay, I've got this crazy sound in my head, this crazy frequency, and I'm gonna dial. I'd imagine you just kind of do things happen by accident? Are things improv? Do you just hit the red button sometimes and just let it rip? What's the typical approach?
I guess there's two answers to it. I don't know how much of my stuff you've ever listened to. Because there's
a pretty good bit. A pretty good bit. Mostly recent stuff.
I have two recording styles. One is what pretty much captures my live show, and that is live. I don't control the feedback. I used to try to, and it just ends up looking like a guy focusing too hard on caring. And the last thing I think my show is about is caring about anybody. And then I do have like longer recordings where there's no real vocals and stuff, and that I don't do it live much, but I do know how to control microphone feedback as if it were an instrument. I have the one I would recommend is an album called Childhood I put out, and that is really, there's no lyrics. There is me making some sounds with the microphone, but you take a room, you put some amps in there, and you search for the tone. It's all about room placement, and there's no way you can replicate those kind of tracks live, because once you get another body in the room, it's going to throw off things, because all microphone feedback is just controlling sound waves that are flying through the air, almost in a theremin way.
Right.
So So I guess the answer is yes, but when I performed live, I didn't.
It makes
Yeah.
perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
Matt M, he chimed in real quick. He says, and Shawn, give me your thoughts on this movie. Matt M says Chud 2 is my favorite newfound 80s flick. I finally gave it a chance and loved it. Shawn, your thoughts on Chud 2?
I haven't seen it, dude. Like I've never been able to find the VHS of it. I love the first one.
There was a rumor. Chud 2 is a good movie, and it's nothing like the first one. There was a rumor. If somebody in the chat can tell me this, the rumor was that Chud 2 was originally filmed, excuse me, as some other kind of movie, and then they changed the name of the movie at the last second because they just thought it would make more money on something. So I don't know, but yeah,
Are
Shawn,
the
Chud 2 is
Chuds
great.
in it? Because I know what the cover art looks like, and it has the Chud monsters on it. Are they not actually
Chud
in it?
2, Chud 2, Chud the Bud the Chud. No, there's no like Chud creatures. It's like Return to the Living Dead Part 2. And it's actually kind of fun.
Okay, dude.
Somebody just asked me a really good question visited by Voices, which I believe is Lorne from the Sausage Factory. Thoughts on BOC Imaginos? Shawn, I don't know if you're a big Blue Oyster Cult fan. I am
Oh
a
yeah.
die-hard Blue Oyster Cult fan.
Dude. Nice. Yeah, I love
Um,
the Oyster Cult. Yeah.
I absolutely love Imaginos, Lorne. I think my favorite tracks on Imaginos are uh, I really love the song Del Rio's song. I love the second
Mm,
version of Astronomy on that album. I love that late 80s sound that they got. My favorite Blue Oyster Cult album I think it's got to be Spectrus. It's just a perfect album from A to Z for me. But yeah, Blue Oyster Cult, one of the greatest
yeah.
underappreciated rock bands in the world. They'll never be, a band like Blue Oyster Cult could never be famous today because they're too quirky. They're too
Absolutely.
non-mainstream,
Uh,
no
have
kind of
you
rock band can really get famous today.
have you seen the movie Stoned Age?
No, it's on my list. I have a list
Okay.
of movies that I need to,
Yeah.
and that's something I've never seen. So,
Not only is that movie's plot based around Blue Oyster Cult, but they have like a Blue Oyster Cult 8-track that they're jamming in their car. And I just remember the first
oh
time
wow,
watching it and just like that, I don't know, that's just my jam right there. That's just so cool. And
absolutely,
I have
yeah,
a few
great
Blue
band,
Oyster Cult 8-tracks. I have a few of them actually.
yeah, that's awesome. I've got it cost me a fortune, but I got every album they ever did on full size records. Every album.
Oh, that's
Imaginos was
true.
hard to track down, but I got it. They're just a great live band. They were okay. Oh, Austin Wilcutt. Here we go. Shawn, he says Chud 2 was supposed to be Return of the Living Dead 3. Wow, that's
Wow.
crazy. I remember hearing a story
Wow.
about that. But yeah, dude, if you ever get a chance, Chud 2, Bud the Chud, I would say you probably like it more than it may be more of your style than the first movie. It's interesting because I was so offended by Joe Bob Briggs because he just crapped on Chud the entire time on the show. And I was like, Joe, you're wrong on this, buddy. Chud 2 is a classic. Being a John Goodman fan because he used to live in New Orleans, excuse me, he probably still does. When I was before Katrina, I can recall a couple times. This is no BS. Being in the grocery store with my mom and seeing Fred Flintstone, John Goodman, just buying groceries at the supermarket,
No way,
and he would
dude.
he would have a ball cap on. He just didn't want to be messed with. You could tell he was you forget that these are regular people. And
Yeah.
it was, I can remember my mom's like, Christian, and I was a kid. She goes, Christian, that's Fred Flintstone over there. And I'm like, really? And she goes, just leave him alone, leave him alone. But I remember being in awe by him. He's actually a pretty tall guy. So,
That's like my all-time favorite TV dad is
oh,
him on
Dan
Roseanne.
Connor was great. So,
That's so good.
all right. So, Shawn, I got another question for you. So, I want you
Yeah,
to
buddy.
kind of, I think the people would actually like to hear about, just to hear about this place because I've bought a couple laser discs from you before in the past. As a matter of fact, I've still got the lovely Hellraiser set from you that I got, which I'm
Oh
sure you
wow.
probably regret. I'm sure you probably regret selling it to me because it's a beautiful laser disc set. Um,
Wow, gosh, I sold
uh,
that to you, did I?
I've
No, I don't
yeah,
even
I've
remember.
got yeah.
Is
You
that
you
terrible?
finished off you finished off my Friday Laserdisc collection with the final chapter, which is my favorite slasher movie ever. You also sold me Tourist Trap. which is
Oh
a
yeah, yeah,
pretty rare movie, and a movie that I'm glad to see get some love.
yeah.
And you also sold me
I regret
something else.
selling you that one.
Yeah, I still got it. Still got it.
Oh, that's good.
Uh, I'm gonna get to you. I got another question, guys. I'm gonna get right to that, but let me finish this thought. So, Shawn, tell me about this. You have this. You have this lovely. If it's nearby, I'd love for you to grab it to show off. But you have a lovely CED of Friday the 13th, A New Beginning. I don't know if it's near you, real quick.
As a matter of fact, everything in my apartment is near me because it's so small.
Oh,
Uh,
a bachelor pad. All right,
um,
guys. So, yeah, look at this, guys. This is a lovely. This is a CED, which is a. So, I forget what does CED stand for, Shawn? Compatible.
capacitant electronic disc. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So this is a dead format, guys. This kind of lost the format wars, if you will. Like, I guess you could say it lost to beta tape, VHS, and
Here's
Laserdisc.
one,
It
maybe.
died. Yeah, it died in the mid '80s. But Shawn, what I wanted to get at is the story of where this CED came from and
Oh, I would
the sh-
love
the
to.
strange the strange the strange just the strangeness of this video store, because when we talk about this video store, there's no VHS tapes in when the
No.
store. So tell me about the store. Tell me about what the name of the store. Tell me the history about the
So,
store.
so basically, when I was a little kid, it was Gary's Home Video, and that was in the town I grew up in and whatnot. So and it was just your run of the mill video rental store. It was a little bigger than the one that I actually was like more or less babysat in at one point. But I always loved it and whatnot. And it closed when I was pretty young. And quite a few years ago, I stumbled across this disc and I looked on it. It said property of Gary's TV and rental. Only it was from 2 towns over. And I'm like, well, that's not where that was located. And I talked to some people, and not too many people remembered or whatnot. And then I started my job. I work at a pharmacy, and one of the patients, is that what you'd call him? I don't know. One of the customers came in, and it happened to be Gary Gates. And I turned to my coworker and I said, is that the guy who owned the video rental store when I was a kid? She's like, yeah. So dude, when I approached him, first of all, I was like starstruck, and he's like, what the hell's wrong with this guy?
Right.
And I'm like, oh no, you own the video rental store. Oh, you were awesome. You're awesome, and all this stuff. And so I bring up, I'm like, I have a video disc, a CED. And then finally he kind of like, he's like, oh, this kid, okay, he knows what he's talking about. So he starts rapping with me. And he's like, oh, that would be from my first location. Now he opened up this video rental store, and I would say 1980, 1981.
Okay.
And all they had were these: no Betamax, no VHS. He said that was the format that he thought was going to win. And then, of course, VHS and Betamax honestly took it out within like a year. This lasted from like 81 to 80. This is an 85, and this is rare because of that.
I think 86 was the last year. It may have died in 86, but 85 had to have been the last real year, because I know I've seen on the internet pictures of Back to the Future on CED, which that's 85
that's
as well.
a rare one. So yes, and that's one of the hard to find ones, because that last year, I mean, I don't even know why they were still making them that year. When you really do your research on the format, that format pretty much bankrupt RCA as a company. But what's beautiful about the format is that it is a vinyl record in there,
right,
that plays a movie and music. And they worked on the format, I believe, since the 60s. And they didn't get it out until, 1980 or 1981 or whatever it was. So they put decades into being like, and you can just imagine why, because they didn't have the technology like we do now. So they're like, what'd be smart is putting a movie on one of them records there,
Yeah.
So they work on it for almost 3 decades. And then they finally put all their money into it, get it out. And then people are like, we just put movies on tape. Had to suck.
Yeah. What's interesting when you look at something like that, Austin Wilcutt's shocked. He says, never seen a Friday 5 on CD. Well, I'm not surprised. And I'm sure Shawn has never seen.
Not to interrupt. And
Yeah.
I had him autograph it.
Right. So I wonder the history on a tape like that. I wonder, was it rented before? How many times did that CED get rented? And not to mention what about just the pure what's the word I'm looking for? The pure pain in the butt, I guess, of renting CEDs, because it's not
Oh my
like
God.
the VHSs, you put the cover and then you have the Blockbuster tapes, excuse me, behind it. Like for CEDs, you just have to, here's the CED, bring this back. So that
Yeah,
just seems like a pain, and that's for renting, that would just be a nightmare.
My buddy Joe, he's got quite a few years on us. I actually grew up with his son. Um, he used to rent, like this happened years ago, and then one day I brought it up that I found a video disc from Gary's, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I used to rent video discs from there." And I'm like, "Oh my God, like you got to tell me all about it and stuff." And believe it or not, he goes, "Well, my only memory is that I rented that I Spit on Your Grave movie, and I ended up getting it lodged in the player, and I had to break the movie to get it out."
Oh,
And I
no.
was just like, "You rented I Spit on Your Grave on video disc. We can't picture this, man." That's amazing. And then how many movies were even released on that format? So I imagine this video rental store couldn't have been much bigger than my place for some reason, because it's just they couldn't have had that many damn movies.
Right.
And just to fill up the store, he's getting in I Spit on Your Grave. He must have had every damn movie you could get in 1981.
Yeah, and it had to be an expensive venture. To get back to the chat, visited by Voices. If Lauren's still here, he asks, and you can answer this question as well, Shawn. He asks, Jaws 3 or 4? That's a good question. Now,
4.
I'm assuming he means which one do I enjoy more. 4 is silly as silly gets, because the fact that a shark can hold a grudge. There's so many things that don't make sense about Jaws 4, but on a I don't know, it's enjoyable to me. There you go. There's the love. I actually have an original poster of Jaws 4, believe it or not. I don't know why I bought it, but I bought it.
I love that cover art, man.
It's fantastic. Yeah, that's my poster. Yeah. I enjoyed Jaws 4, but I go, I'm not one of those. I don't want to say that, and people say Jaws 4, stupid movie, worse. I know it's stupid, but you know what? A lot of movies I like would be considered, Jaws 4 is fun,
Well,
and so is 3.
And
3's,
Jaws,
yeah.
I don't think Jaws 3 is fun. I think Jaws 3 is just a big commercial for Marineland or wherever they are. It's so
SeaWorld.
boring.
Yeah, the SeaWorld.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many more shots of that than anything. That's a movie where if you zone out and miss a bunch, you technically didn't.
True.
I don't know, not to insult Jaws 3, but I do like Jaws 4 better, despite it being worse.
Right. Austin says, I remember the crappy EP VHS tapes of the Friday series Gateway put out.
Yeah.
The 90s was not a good time to be a Jason fan until the DVDs came out. Now, what my ignorance, what is he referring to, the EP VHS tapes?
The rental copies would have been in SP, which would have been, a lot more tape in the cassette. Those are usually your heavier ones you pick up, man. Which means much better quality, because they knew like hundreds of people were going to be renting it. And then in the early 90s, they would start releasing movies, and you could find them at, whatever the equivalent to Walmart was, Ames. And they would be affordable. But what they did is that you'd have like that much tape in that reel, and it'd be just the lowest quality crap. So even the first time view was pretty crappy.
So would you say that EP is another way of saying the Good Times releases, if you will? Or is that what they were?
Oh, the Good Time. I think he's talking about almost like the manufacturer, the label, or the distributor, whatever the name was on it.
Because I remember
Paramount would have been the first edition.
Well, I remember I bought some movies at the thrift store, and I was ignorant. I don't know much about the VHS world. I'm a big Laserdisc guy, but I've since gotten into VHS. And when I had my Nightmare Part 2, you let me know, like, hey, no, that's actually somebody. I believe it was you. Maybe you talked to me about it.
Yeah, because it says, what is it? It says Treasure.
Treasure videos, excuse me, not
Video treasures.
video treasures.
Video treasures.
Not good times. That's what I meant. Video treasures. Now I'm assuming video treasures is that type of reel to reel, if you will. It's that cheap, thinned out film, if you will.
Yeah. It was the EP. I remember the grocery store in the '90s, that Elm Street 2 that you have. You know, they had that that you could buy. But you know, I was so young. I would have loved to have owned that. But in reality, what they're doing is they're giving you an affordable copy that is terrible quality.
Okay, because Austin says Paramount.
Can you imagine that now, though, like in the DVD Blu-ray world, where it's like, yeah, if you go rent the DVD, it looks really good, but the ones you buy at the store, man, they look like crap. You could never imagine that happening.
No. That'd be nuts. Austin Wilcutt says Paramount had a deal with Gateway in the 90s to release Friday 1 through 8 on video and EP. So I've got Friday the 13th part. I have Friday the 13th part 7 and part 8, and I believe they're both from 94. So I'm assuming those are.
I don't think most people. There are a few editions of the first Friday the 13th, but the very first edition had a very unique cover. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get this on film. It opened up like this.
Oh, wow.
And then the movie slipped out that way.
I've never seen that. I've never seen that in my life.
Very unique style of cover there. And this is what would have been in the rental shop. I don't think this is an ex-rental, though. I think this was actually someone's copy.
Oh.
I think I do have an original.
Part 2?
No, this isn't an original, is it? Yeah, maybe it is. Yeah, but yeah.
Wow, beautiful. Love it.
And sorry, I'm just showing this crap off.
Real quick, visited by Voices One. That's Lauren. He says Video Treasures was Media Video's budget label. So I'm assuming that means they were like
exactly what it was.
Is that like a subsidiary? Is that basically, what is it?
Yeah, I guess it'd be like if you or I contacted media and was like, can we re-release your movies in an affordable way and put our name on it too? And then the way years later we decipher the first pressing is that our label name wasn't on it.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. It's interesting because
you would not find a Video Treasures as a rental copy. That was unheard of. They were only you buy them.
Let me take a look again at that lovely final chapter you had, because I noticed some cool stickers on there.
This is an ex-rental from a store that's literally at walking distance from where I live now.
Okay.
And that is just so beat up and so beautiful.
Is that Scotch tape on there?
Yeah.
Okay, Shawn, let me ask you this.
So they just taped that beast on there.
Shawn, let me ask you this, Shawn. Does it irk you the way it irks me that they had the audacity to put the sticker right over Jason's mask?
Oh God, how stupid is that, isn't it? But this is one of my most prized possessions
because of the rich history.
And yes, at this point, that's just how it should look. I see a copy of it without that, and I'm like,
man, dude. It's funny. It's funny because I'm a big Nightmare Elm Street fan, but as I get older, I really love the Friday movies, and I'm really appreciating the ones that I was not watching as much growing up. And in the last 2 to 3 years, man, I have just fallen in love with Final Chapter so much. I don't know. I put it over so much. I'm not a slasher aficionado. I'm really not. I try to watch a lot of movies, and I'm stuck in my ways. I find movies I like, and I just watch them again and again and again. But man, Final Chapter, I really think it's one of the best slasher movies I've ever seen. That's my favorite Jason movie. And as great as Kane is to a lot of people, I mean, Shawn, your thoughts on Ted White in that movie? Because I just thought he was phenomenal in Final Chapter.
Everyone's going to like turn off the chat as soon as I say this, but I don't know what the big deal is about Kane Hodder.
Well, I think it's the era. That late 80s is very popular with horror fans, and not more so than early 80s. I don't know, because and I also think Kane is the most vocal. You see him the most, and he does all these interviews, and he's very identifiable. You don't see much of Ted White or anything.
No, I guess I'd be biased because I like the camp era of Friday the 13th, which in my opinion is 1 through 5. And after that, it becomes anti-hero Terminator Jason. And I like those movies. Gosh, I've seen them each like 100 times, but I don't fawn over them. I love the camp era of it. I like the setting.
And that's really interesting you say that, because now I want to say this, because a lot of my friends that are Friday fans, they hold Friday the 13th Part 6 in such high regards, and I've always scratched my head, and not in disrespect, but I always say to myself, is that one really, because that one really is Scream before Scream in a very, very light sense. And I always saw Jason as a gardener. Like, why was he wearing a tool belt? Why did he have nice fresh garden gloves on? I never liked the look of Jason in the movie. And people look at me like some of the Friday fans, which a lot of them I talk to are very nice people. They don't cuss you out, but they always look at me like, really, Christian? Really? I'm like, no, I don't get Friday 6. Huge Alice Cooper fan, obviously. I love his music in the movie.
Sure.
But I never understood what was because, dude, I'm telling you, Friday 6 is a fan favorite. And your thoughts on specifically Friday 6, because you made it sound like you're not the biggest fan either.
I feel like if we were like 17 the year it came out, we would love it, because I'm just like a history buff in all sorts of ways. That movie is such a product of the year it was released. The humor, the zingers, that the credit card joke they make when they slam the face into the tree and the smiley faces there. That was a big, like, have a nice day slogan back then and whatnot. So there were all these jokes that were like perfect for the time. And the only reason I know that is because over the years I've like researched things, and then I'll be like, oh yeah, now I get that Jason joke. I don't know how I feel about 6. I guess it is not boring.
No, absolutely not. It's a well-made addition. I just I never fell in love with it like a lot of people did, and I always felt weird. No. Like, what am I missing? Like, what am I?
My 2 favorites are 1, 5, and 2, and then probably 3, and then 4. So I like the 2 Jason movies without Jason the most. So, but I love Jason. He's one of my favorite horror characters. So I'm odd when it comes to that franchise, but I am a big fan of it. It's just straight. I love Jason X.
Yeah.
Love it.
Let's see. Yeah. Because we got Austin right here saying, Austin says Friday the 13th, 7/8 would have been better with the uncut kills, though. Yeah. Because the MPAA was still violent. No pun intended in that era. Austin says Shawn loves the Critters. Shawn loved the Critters 2 poster on your wall. I know Shawn does too. Shawn has a lot of great Critter stuff. Visited by Voices, live. I think he means love Jason X. Yeah, Jason X is a movie I've completely like told myself, Christian, get over yourself. Just enjoy it for what it is.
Man, I like it since it came out, I guess.
I want to get on something else. So, Shawn, those VHS tapes you have over there, is that the majority of your collection behind you? Have you had those for a very long time? Are you a quote unquote VHS collector? What's the story with the tapes?
I almost don't consider myself a VHS collector because I never got into DVD. Oddly enough. I just was, because I have such that nostalgia with the video rental store, I was just always hooked on VHS. I never grew out of it. And then it went away. And then it became like a thing where I could get at the flea markets. The stuff behind me, that's strictly South Park and Beavis and Butthead. I have a thing over there that's like a spinner rack of Beavis and Butthead. All my horror VHS is just filling up my closet and filling up my kitchen cupboards. I live in a studio apartment, as you know.
Right.
None of it's really displayed. But the cartoon stuff I've had since I was a kid. I think my battery's about to die, Christian. Can I log back in like 5 minutes and let it charge?
Sure.
Absolutely. All right, you're gonna be on for a bit still?
Yeah, I'll be on.
Okay, sorry, Larry.
No, do you think? I'll talk to the people in the old chat.
All right. Yeah, I'll just plug it in, go have a cigarette. You chat away, my friend.
All right. All right, ladies and germs, let's see who we got out there. Austin Woolcut's been commenting a lot. Let's see what Austin's saying. I have Nightmare 3 on Video Treasures Media VHS. The quality is crap, though. That's the thing about them Video Treasures, because I did subsequently pop mine in to see if it was any good, and boy, it was a lousy transfer. And I think part of that too was from the wear and tear from people using it, but yeah, it was fairly lousy. Austin Wilcutt says renting DVDs just wasn't the same as renting a VHS tape. Also, the selections were never as good in rental stores with DVD.
I agree.
It was totally different. I remember it's like the efforts of DVD covers. It wasn't the same, because you got the art of the cover of a movie. It's as if it was dying. Everything was just going digital. So you had these guys making these. I think they were like matte paintings and just actual drawings and stuff. You know, something like Leprechaun. I don't think that was. That could have been partially some kind of pre-digital photo editing. I don't know if that was really a picture of Warwick in there, but you take something like that, the cover of Leprechaun, and it was very metaphorical. I always was a big fan of movie posters that were metaphoric. A perfect example is a movie like Jason Takes Manhattan. That movie poster is a complete metaphor of the movie, because it's Jason Takes Manhattan, and you got Jason over the city and his hand over the buildings. And it's almost, you know, I'm a big fan of that. Obviously, you know, even, like Critters 2 is a great example as well, because you got these critters, you get these critters in this big ball, and they're rolling in, and it's like they're back. I can think of a lot of movie posters that are so identifiable in my head as a child.
In my opinion, where it fell off with DVD when we're coming to cover art, and people out there, let me know if you agree with me on this. The cover art for Saw, it was very white. It had something focused on in the middle. It might as well have been a black and white cover outside of a green tone and a little bit of red for the blood. You can find for the next 15 years after Saw came out, look at the way Exorcism of Emily Rhodes cover art looks. Look at the I Spit on Your Grave remake cover art. Every horror movie just ripped off the formula for the Saw. The first, well, all of them, because they all kind of looked like it. And that was the downfall of horror movie cover art, in my opinion, was everybody ripping off Saw.
Yeah, I can't really remember, like in the last maybe 5 or 6 years, I'm trying to think about a movie I went to the store to get the Blu-ray of, and the cover up was just like, man, this looks cool. And I'm struggling to really, you know, a movie like
a new one.
Yeah, like I'm trying to think. You know, every now and again there's Shin
Godzilla.
Shin Godzilla. That is a good one. I really like that. You know, there's a movie I watched a couple years ago, Hereditary, which a lot of horror fans have seen it. I just thought it was a fantastic movie, but the artwork for the cover art was not only just, it didn't really paint a picture of what you're about to see. It was just as boring as anything. And I swear, I think it hurts the box office a little bit, because, you know, if you don't see a trailer for something, that initial poster is the gateway to you know, your potential interest in a movie.
And you know what's kind of, I don't know, ironic is the word or anything, but now you have all these like t-shirt companies coming out, like Fright Rags and Cavity Colors, and they make like the most amazing collage cover art for horror movies. And it's almost like, wow, that was actually better than the original VHS cover art sometimes. Do you know the places I'm talking about?
Oh, absolutely. You know, and I think some of the same artists that do shirts for those actually do some of the artworks for the Scream Factory movies. And
dude. Yeah. All the ones coming back, because cover art is making a comeback, because finally they're realizing how important it is to horror fans. I think horror fans that don't even realize how important it is to themselves. It is, man. We love cover art.
Yeah. And what's nice is, like, you would think horror fans would be pretty stiff, like, no, just I want original artwork, keep it original. But yeah, you know, it's crazy how well received a lot of these Scream Factories are. People love. I've gotten to the point now to where my Trick or Treat Scream Factory Blu-ray I got, the new artwork was so absolutely stunningly awesome that I didn't take the time to pull out the slip, because on the Blu-ray cases you have the slip cover and then you have the actual case. You can take the paper in the Blu-ray and flip it around, and it'll have the original poster art. And I usually do that. Right, yeah. I usually will do that with a lot of the releases, but some of them are getting so good that like I don't even take the time to do that. I just leave it because I love the way this new artwork looks. So,
well, that's awesome, though. Yeah. Honestly,
Austin says the Sleepwalker Scream Factory cover art looks pretty good, maybe better than the '92 poster. There's still some movies back in the day that have, I don't want to say bad, maybe lackluster artwork. And Sleepwalkers is okay, but that new artwork was absolutely stunning. I loved it. So,
there's Shawn, some that aren't.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Let me ask you this. Let me get on Halloween for a second, because I don't know if we ever talked about this. Did you see Halloween 2018?
4 times.
Okay, so I just want to jump into this. To preface real quick, to give my thoughts, although I've given it a million times, and I plan on doing like a re-review. I thought it was pretty darn good. I don't really have any major complaints like this movie was just terribly made or crap. Shawn, I don't think I've ever asked you this. What was your what you think about the movie?
Well, I went 4 times to the point where the movie theater gave me their poster, which is really cool. There were moments in that movie that were so perfect that it doesn't matter that there were other scenes that weren't. The title card intro with the pumpkin rotting in reverse, that was so amazing.
Very symbolic too. Very symbolic.
Oh my gosh, that was so beautiful, because that's what I want from a Halloween movie. What do I love about the original? It's very visually stimulating, atmospheric, and has some of the best music ever. Literally everything I want from a horror movie, for the most part, is in that film. And there's a few scenes. Every mangled body they find is so freaking cool, dude. And then that one long shot where they follow him going from house to house, that's why I went back 4 times, because I just wanted to keep watching that freaking scene.
Yeah,
you know?
My brother made a really good point when we were talking about that scene where he walks down the driveway into that little shed, grabs the hammer, and my brother was right. I tell myself this too. He goes, "Imagine if they would have showed that and they took out every bit of music. All you heard was his footsteps going into that little shed. True. Oh, it would have raised the hair on my arms."
But yeah, I think you're right.
I want to get your thoughts on this particular topic in the movie, because I went into the movie with a very specific frame of mind, and then when I watched it, I completely changed it based on the movie itself. Before I say this though, just know I actually did love the movie, and I thought it was great. So before this movie came out, everybody talked about Laurie Strode and Michael are not related. Yada yada blah blah. Yeah. And I told myself before, it goes, okay, well that makes sense, because if they are related, how is it going to be any different from H2O? Because I mean, it literally would be the same thing except just H4O. So I was like, okay, so that's why they're doing that, and there you go. I watched the movie, and when I watched the movie, the first thing I'll say is nothing feels like H2O about this movie. Completely different pacing, completely different look. And partially, a part of that is because of the time it's made. That was 20 years ago. The world is different. Yeah. You know, Creed is no longer a band.
What are you talking about, man?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So
don't go there.
When I watched the movie, I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be very interesting to see how they change history, or what are they gonna do to let us know? Are they not gonna bring it up at all? They have to bring it up, because otherwise you just assume that they are brother and sister. So when they get to the scene where the kids are walking down the street, and they say, well, wasn't that his sister, Laurie Strode? Yeah. And it was like, nah, they just thought that, and that was it. And then I said to myself,
she's like, no, it's just some rumor people made up.
And when I saw that, I said to myself, Really? Like, is that all? And then I told myself, okay, so that means the only reason that was done, in my opinion, was to appease Carpenter, because Carpenter has been very vocal that he just wrote that in part 2 because he didn't know what to write. And that's fine. I get that. But he's made it vocal that he's not a fan of it whatsoever. So when I saw the movie, I said, there's no way they did that for any reason than just to make Carpenter happy because he wasn't a fan of it. Because otherwise, I thought they would have been a lot more creative with it. Now, that's a minor gripe in the grand scheme of things because it doesn't really affect the movie. But on the other side, what I said after the fact that I saw the movie was, you could have made them brother and sister and had to just change maybe a little bit of dialogue throughout the movie, but the movie could have been exactly the same. And I don't think it would have affected it at all. So
I think it would have. Let me say why here. I actually was happy at first that they didn't go with the sibling plot, but there are two things. You can either not have them be siblings and have the movie we had, or you could have had them be siblings and Michael would have actually cared to have found Laurie and they wouldn't have had to come up with that Loomis plot, which just is like, it was such thrown in there just so they could have an excuse to get Michael to where Laurie was, because the whole movie, Michael is not looking for Laurie. He's just fucking out. And I'm sorry. And he's just going at it, you know?
Right.
And so they pretty much force Laurie and Michael into the same house. And at that point, it honestly just still feels like Michael's just trying to kill her because she's there. He doesn't seem too focused on her in any way.
Yeah, that's definitely something I haven't really thought about. And I guess that's just because of the circumstances in the movie. It's almost as if Laurie just can't help herself, which really, it almost doesn't make any sense because, you know, I don't know. When you really start to analyze the movie and the way things happen, you start to realize that I don't want to call them cracks, but questions is one way to put it. You know, my biggest thing too was the doctor. You know, the fact that he wanted to kill that cop and wanted Michael to be free, it's very out there. You know, most doctors.
The movie goes downhill from that act right there, and it's pretty much because that act only happens so that they can force Michael and Laurie into the same room. They just came up with the most ridiculous plot device to segue into what everyone came to see. And honestly, I didn't care for Laurie's character. I didn't think Jamie Lee Curtis was good. I also think that the only reason she did this movie was so she could have some stupid political agenda of stalkers and women living in fear. And it's like, oh my gosh, get off your high horse, lady. Like, I saw that gymnastic movie you did with that guy in the 80s. You're not that great.
Yeah, I wonder the payday she got for this.
I came for the music and Michael Myers and the atmosphere. Every time it sat there focusing on her and her PTSD, it's just like, and also, if you really watch the movie, Michael does not care about her. He is not out searching for her. And I think it's because, like you said, Carpenter pretty much was like, I don't want the sibling thing in there. And they already had a script and they're like, okay, well, if Michael's not looking for her, then how are we going to get them? Because she's focused on him the whole movie. I mean, I guess that's kind of is me, you know, she's so traumatized, but also, that the whole, you know what, man, that movie sucks. No, I'm kidding. I went on for 5 minutes praising it, and now I'm going on 10 about how I hate it.
See, you bring up interesting things because I really never thought about Michael really wasn't interested, and it was Laurie's obsessive nature of having to know where he is, wanting to be around him, and you know, I gotta say though, I still liked her. I liked her. I like this Laurie Strode better than H2O because I can't stand. Because here's the thing: to me, H2O, that's probably really what Jamie Lee Curtis is like in real life. Take the Michael Myers, just brash and smart aleck. Yeah. That's what she seems like in real life, and that's what she brought to the table in H2O, and that is very annoying to me. I kind of liked how she was more quiet and just still. I don't want to say stuck up, just still mean, but quiet. Like, you know, it's a lot better. She aggravates me in H2O, and it's really not one of my favorites in the franchise. I'm really not a big fan of H2O, to be honest with you.
I don't like H2O at all.
Yeah, that just wasn't
No.
my favorite era of horror in movie making in that era.
When, yeah, like Scream was good, and then everything happened after it for a little bit.
Right, right. Well, and that movie,
Yeah,
with Kevin Williamson, I believe, writing the movie,
Scream was
and
great.
just it wasn't my favorite era of movies. But
No,
I want to ask you this. So we saw the other day that Jason Blum, I believe it was Blum, was in a meeting with Laurie, and they
yeah, they
obviously
had a
make it.
NECA figure.
So what do you think is going to happen with a part two? Because it's obviously going to
I think
happen.
it's gonna suck. Not trying to be sarcastic. There was an original ending they shot and they haven't released, but tester audiences hated it. But it was probably before they got rid of the sibling subplot. But Michael thinks he kills Lori, and then he wanders off into the woods and sits down on a tree stump. And you listen to his breath, breathing in his mask, slowly slow down and fade out, and you realize that he dies because he feels complete, that he finally killed her. If they would have left the sibling thing in and went with that and had the balls to make no sequels, they can make more Halloweens, but just let this story end on that note. I think that would have been a really good movie, dude.
Well, it's kind of artistic in a sense, that kind of ending, and I mean, it would. You're right. It would be very ballsy to see. There's just this hesitation to really kill Michael, and
But then he's letting himself die because he feels completed. I think I would have loved that because he's still
yeah.
controlling his destiny, I guess.
It would have been definitely interesting to see. I'd love to see the actual footage of that. But man, I just see, no matter what's going to happen, man, Halloween fans will never truly be happy. And I don't know. I don't really consider myself a Halloween fanatic. I love the movies. I'm a big fan of the Thorn trilogy, which is blasphemous to a lot of purists out there.
Yeah, I don't agree with you, but I like that about you, that you like it. It kind of made me like, it's like, my buddy Christian likes those. I guess
Yeah. Well, I like them
okay
for what they are. I'm not. I'm not jaded. I always tell people, because it's my favorite, that doesn't mean I think it deserves the Golden Globes. It is what it is. I like the look of the film. I kind of like I love how ridiculous Paul Rudd is. Nobody would act like that in real life.
No, it's so stupid. Well, it's like one of my favorite movies is Ice Cream Man, but if anyone ever told me it sucked, I wouldn't defend it.
Right? Yeah. So it's hard. That's the thing, man. That's the thing I've learned with YouTube, is it's very hard to have an opinion, because I do these lists and I always make sure I say these are my favorites. This doesn't mean I think this movie should win every Oscar. So no, Halloween's
though, honestly, man, if for real discussion on what I think Halloween 2 or Halloween 2020 or whatever, I don't think it's going to be good, because I think everyone who was involved with the last one was really into the idea of it. John Carpenter, even though I didn't like Laurie Strode, you could tell Jamie Lee Curtis totally was into that role. And I don't think any of them want to do a sequel to it that much, where they're going to put that same amount of energy into it twice. And I think it's going to feel like it, personally.
That's the thing with the sequels, man. It's like, I think a really good sequel is it can happen, but I think it happens when you least really expect it to. For instance, Strangers Pray at Night, conceivably its own movie. The only thing that's really the same is The Strangers, and that movie is great. But the thing with Halloween 2 is, I agree. I think it's just going to be, well, what can we? It's going to be too much of a task, not of will and desire and a love to do it, but now it's like, okay, we got to follow this up. We got to have something just as good, and it's going to seem
because
it's not going to be as charming.
Here, not literally, but let's sit here and try to write what they would probably write. I can't think of anything that damn good.
And then you're gonna have to worry about
what
them.
They should do, man. They should find out that they're related.
Wouldn't that be absolutely ridiculous?
They just bring it back. And they're like, you know what? John's not really caring as much now. Let's make them siblings.
Right. I don't know. We could discuss this all night. That's the thing, though, man.
I'm
It's
down.
because like when sequels happen, it's like it's almost like, and that's one thing I really liked about Strangers Pray at Night is you don't learn another thing about the strangers. We don't know who they are, and that you don't want to. You don't always need to. You don't have to continue.
No.
The story doesn't have to continue with the back line of the slashers. Just a fresh story. You know, that's what was so great about Halloween 2. I mean, excuse me, about the Strangers Pray at Night 2. And what if they actually did something like that with Halloween 2, where what if Michael just was able to kill the Strodes, and now Halloween 2 is just another family that gets stalked by Michael? What's wrong with that?
Into it.
What's wrong with you know what I'm saying? But now give us
a real Halloween 2 where he gets fixated on someone else, where another girl walks past him.
Like what a novel! Is that too novel of a concept? Obviously, it can't happen though, because Jamie Lee Curtis knows where the gravy train is again, and she wouldn't let that happen. But you know, that's what I'm worried about, man. There's going to be they're going to have to exploit something, continue the backstory. I'm sure it's going to happen, but it's going to be interesting. I don't know.
I mean, I'm going to watch it. You know what, man? I'm like you in a sense when it comes to movies and horror movies. Like sometimes I'll say I hate something, but I don't. There's only one movie I've ever hated, and it was The Others. No, it wasn't The Others. No, it was this M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Forgotten.
I don't even know if I saw that. When I saw a lot of his when he was really hitting it hard, you know, The Village.
It was one of those. Well, it was like the girl's son is missing and nobody remembers her son, and she's convinced she had a son, and the movie's like really good and it's getting there. And I'm sitting there with like my best friend as a kid, and I turned to him like 45 minutes in the movie and I go, wouldn't that be stupid if it were aliens? And 5 minutes later, it turned out to be aliens. And we're just like, what the frick, dude? Like, so that'll always be a movie that I claim to hate. But for the most part, I don't hate anything either when it comes to I take stuff for what it is and enjoy it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, here we got Lauren says, visit by Voice of Strangers. Happy Death Day, Hellfest. We should be celebrating these new films and potential franchises rather than continually looking backwards to the 70s and 80s. Yeah, I'm guilty of that. You know, but I make an effort. I make an effort to try to watch a new horror movie, whether it be on Shudder, whether it be just a new release that comes out. You know, I'm trying to think of something really good. One of my favorite movies I watched in the past couple of years was that Mandy movie with Nicolas Cage. I thought that was really, really great. I'm telling you what though, I'm starting to get a little burnt out on the new trend of. It's funny because the new trend now, although it's really been happening over the last year, Shawn, you probably noticed this too, is the soundtracks of movies having that 80s style synth sound. It's like, I love it. Don't get me wrong. And it was done well. And, you know, movies like Strangers Pray at Night. I think Your Next was like the first instance where we heard retro style synth in a bigger movie. Like, and after that, then you got the Strangers things and stuff like that. I'm ready for somebody to buck that trend and give me something orchestral again, and I'm sure it's happening, but not
right now we're in a very transparent era of horror. Maybe it's just because we're getting old enough to where we can just like see trends, you know. But like Stranger Things, really, like now it's all about the synth again, which, you know, I love that stuff.
Me too.
And it's all like a horror movie that's like pretty much it's just the Goonies, but it's in a horror movie. And like the new Child's Play that's coming out is going to be that, you know. So that's why It came back, because they're like, well, it kind of was like the Goonies if you think about it, so bring that back, you know. So they're just finding everything they can where they're like, well, how can we get 5 kids, you know, and put them into it. And not saying any of them have been bad yet, to be honest, but it is very easy to see what's happening now. And I guess that kind of takes the fun out of it when the formula's really there.
Right. What would you call, because I was thinking about this earlier, It seems like we've come out of the possession era of horror. Like, what do we
What's the
get? Oh,
possession era?
well, for instance, early 2010s until about 2015, 16-ish, it was all about,
Oh, the
you
exorcism
know,
crap. Yeah.
you had the Conjurings, and you had
Yeah,
then you had the Devil
yeah,
and I, and it was all about exorcism type movies. And are we getting back
yeah.
into a remake phase again in big cinema style? Because in the in the independent scene, there's still a lot of great movies coming out. There was a movie called, Green Room, which was fantastic, about this punk band who gets held up at this venue. Really
Oh,
interesting
yeah.
plots. And that's what I really love seeing that. I love seeing movies that have plots that are so out of left field. This punk, like, for
Yeah,
instance,
that sounds pretty interesting.
Green Room was great. A movie called Don't Breathe, I thought was fantastic. I don't know if you saw
I
that.
saw that at the drive-in. That was pretty sweet.
See,
Yeah.
I love finding these movies, but it pisses me off that these big companies, Paramount and what have you, MGM, they're not putting this stuff in theaters because they think people are not going to be interested in it. I'm okay with movie. I don't know if you saw Hereditary. Like, I'm cool with a movie like Hereditary.
I didn't.
Takes a simple concept, it takes a simple concept of possession, but puts it in a different light. If you ever get the chance to see it, I just thought it was Toni Collette, who was the mom in The Sixth Sense, jaw-dropping performance from her, just so good. But yeah, it just sucks, man. I wish the studios would just take a risk on a movie again, because it doesn't seem like studios want to take everything. Is all about test screenings, and let's see what this studio does and see if this makes money. Let's see if this makes. Oh, they're doing Halloween. Well, we're not going to do. It's a shame.
And when you see a movie like that in theaters, like a movie that I saw in theaters very randomly, was Slither. Have you ever seen Slither?
Oh, it's a masterpiece. You kidding me? I love Slither.
Absolutely. And I just remember the thought crossing my mind while I was seeing that of like, dude, I never thought I would see a movie this cool, like at the Tinseltown Theater, man. Like you could go right next door and see every other like Hollywood movie right now. But for some reason, this is here. And I have not had that feeling since at a movie theater, to be honest. Like, why aren't people taking chances and making movies that far out with a big budget and putting them out there for people?
I get, it's crazy. It seems like things were a lot more. People were able to take more chances back then, because
especially farther away from it.
Especially with like music, because record companies, like, it was either, I forgot who told the story, but it was like record companies used to be ran by old mafia guys and just say, I don't know if this is any good, just put it out. Maybe it'll do good. Maybe it won't. That's how you got bands probably like Blue Oyster Cult. But everything was more pure back then. Now everything has got to be, it's just so micromanaged. It has to be.
It's down to a science, man. Like, they know exactly like what people notice instantly in music. So to create a pop song now, it's almost like a math equation. They know exactly what to do.
Absolutely.
And it's not for you and me, that's for sure.
And I'm assuming, I feel like that's what's going on with movies today.
Totally, dude.
Down to a science, but there is good stuff. I remember Lauren said this in one of the live streams I did with him. He's like, you have to just look for it, and I took that to heart. So, Shudder, man, I'll find some great stuff on Shudder. I really try to watch some foreign films, but Jesus, if I don't hate reading subtitles when I'm watching a movie, I just can't do it. I don't care how good the visuals are. Audition's good. There's a couple movies that'll meet you.
Yeah.
But so,
my TVs are too small for reading subtitles.
I want to bring this up to you, because what blew me away was the fact that you have Shudder. So, what got you into Shudder? Because obviously, for a guy who doesn't do DVDs or Blu-rays for that, Shudder. What was it that got you into Shudder? And just tell me the story about how this happened with you, because you'd have been the last person I would have thought of that would have put Shudder on your old tube TVs. So how did that?
Yeah, because I mean, let me show people my TVs there. Can you see that at all? I turn the camera.
Yeah, I can see it. Are your TVs linked together?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, isn't that sweet?
Yeah.
You daisy chain them. I just realized that last month that I could do that.
Wow, I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, I know it kicks ass. I love it.
Yeah, the story.
But yeah, well, I had to get Shudder because of Joe Bob, and these old TVs. I don't know. I didn't think you could hook anything up to it, but I went out. I got the Roku that actually like goes to RCA cables and stuff, and I did get it strictly for Joe Bob Briggs, honestly, because I grew up watching him on TNT when I was younger and whatnot. And honestly, I don't know. Every once in a while, I see like horror elitists busting on Shudder, but I remember the first time I got it, one of the first things that popped up was that I could watch Microwave Massacre. And I remember that VHS at the store when I was a kid. And do you remember the original animated Frosty the Snowman cartoon, like the hand drawn?
Yeah, the gentleman.
The dude.
Yeah.
He voiced. Yeah, that's the guy who he kills his wife and eats her in the microwave.
Fantastic.
And so that's the first thing I watched on Shudder, and I was just like, man, I've never gotten to see this because to find a VHS of that dude is like $200. It's just one of those movies.
I've got the Arrow
Shudder
video based on it. Yeah, and I think that's the Arrow video transfer is what they put on Shudder as well. So
is it?
Yeah, I think so. That's a lovely movie, man. That's just a lovely movie. I think that was my very first Arrow video as well. So have you experimented on Shudder? Have you? Because I mean,
yeah.
I remember you told me, you said, Christian, you got to check out. They have this. It's basically a Halloween screensaver, and you just let it play on your TV. So I finally found it because I was typing in jack-o'-lantern, and I was like, nothing. Well, I eventually just went to popular releases, and all of a sudden I see this thing called Gulag, and I said, well, what is that?
Yeah.
So I play it, and it's literally a pumpkin just lighting, and it's perfect. So
they had that on for 5 months. I know because I let it on for 5. If I wasn't watching something on my TV, I had the Gulag on. That was so freaking legit, man. In fact, I even recorded it to VHS. I have a VHS if I ever want to pop it in. It runs for like 2 hours of the Gulag.
Wow. So let's talk real quick about Joe Bob because
absolutely
you probably grew up with Monster Vision.
Yeah.
So do you remember what's some of your favorite memories with Joe Bob Briggs, and maybe some of your favorite movies you remember watching with on the
my memories of watching Joe Bob Briggs was that I was still a little too afraid to be watching some of the movies, so I would try to do other things while the movie was happening. And then I would, when Joe Bob came back on, is when I would give the TV full attention again. I was a little wuss, man.
Really?
But he did watch Critters once, and that was awesome. I tried staying up. Friday the 13th never scared me, even as a kid. And what's funny is I literally grew up like surrounded by woods. So that's the one that should have. But I watched that marathon when I was a kid. He stayed up like really late, and like people started disappearing off the sets or something like that. And I remember like being at like 2 a.m. and getting like that sleep deprived weirdness. And it seemed like they planned it like at that moment, the show starts becoming sleep deprived weirdness. That was awesome.
Man.
I love the new Male Girl. I hated the original Male Girl.
Do you remember who that was? Because here's the thing, man. When I remember Joe Bob, I would find him by happenstance, just by being a kid in the summer and being up real late. And this was 99, 2000. So this had to have been the tail end of Joe Bob. Because I think Monster Vision maybe hit 2000, and I could have been seeing.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And I remember
it didn't make it. It didn't make it to 2001. I know that.
I remember vividly. I can remember the Godzilla special he did, because that's the only one I really have a remembrance for. But I remember watching maybe Godzilla versus Space Godzilla or Mothra versus Godzilla, and
I definitely saw that.
I remember being so confused by Joe Bob, like because I had never heard of anything like that. So when I would watch it, I'd be like, "What is this?" Like it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So I just I think what's so special about it, Shawn, do you feel like when you watch a movie, be it on Shudder or even as a young kid watching Joe Bob, the specials, does it make you feel like you're not alone? And does it make you feel like you're watching a movie with somebody, and it actually it engages you more into the movie?
Absolutely, yeah. Because I'm an only child, so I didn't have brothers and sisters or anything too. So for me, especially, I think things like Joe Bob. Beavis and Butthead, in between the episodes, they would watch music videos. And I loved Mystery Science Theater 3000, which they would just, um, in a way, it was kind of, those were the pre-YouTube shows because you were watching them, you were watching something with the thing on TV. So, and in a way, I love your show. I've been watching your channel now for, gosh, maybe 5 years. And that's why I do feel like I know you. But well, after tonight, I really feel like I've met you. But there is something nice about tuning in and getting a personable connection through the TV where it doesn't feel like it's talking at you, it's talking with you.
Right. Yeah. It's great, man. And from what I read, Joe Bob told the people at Shudder after they did 4 or 5 episodes, Joe Bob was like, let's add something and do this with the show now. And the people that work on the show are like, no, we're not changing anything. We're doing it exactly like back in the 90s. We're not changing the thing. And Joe's like, damn, really? We're not going to change anything?
I loved the finale. Well, first of all, they watched Hello, Mary Lou Part 2. And I have a pretty good story, not to get too vulgar on your channel, but I found a Video Treasures VHS of that about 6 years ago. And that movie was so warped, but I actually took acid that night, and I've never done drugs too much in my life. And I just thought that movie was the most insane movie I'd ever seen. And then the next day I popped it in again, and I realized the video was so warped and brought it doesn't go black and white on purpose. It just was because the movie was so that is like the best way to watch Hello, Mary Lou Part 2 is on a broken VHS tape.
Oh, man. Let me ask you this. What was this movie? Because I watched it on Shudder live with Joe Bob. I forgot the movie's name, but it really bizarre film. It was the movie that had Tiny Tim in it.
Oh gosh, I already forget. It's funny because a Tiny Tim impersonator played my last show. I love Tiny Tim.
Did you watch? Did you watch that film on Twitter?
Yeah, I watched it with Joe Bob. I never heard of that movie before, believe it or not. And I'm like a Tiny Tim music connoisseur. I know his albums front to back. I didn't know he did movies.
That was a really bizarre movie. For the first time you see Tiny Tim in the film, he was really creepy. I mean, wow. He was a pretty big boy. I don't remember Tiny Tim ever being that heavy. I was like, wow, he looks, because I just remember, seeing old video clips of him being this creepy looking.
Johnny Carson. Yeah. He was young and kind of thin on Johnny Carson. No, I remember him more as being kind of a bigger guy.
Blood Harvest is
Oh, and you know what else was really cool about that, man, is the guy they had on as the guest, what was his name? Oh gosh, I don't know, but they had him on because he knew a lot about Tiny Tim, the older gentleman that came in second.
I forget. I know you're talking about. Yeah, I forget his name.
He actually, and I think it was in Texas quite a few years ago, he had it open for about 6 or 7 years. He had an 8-track tape museum. Bucks Burnett is his name. And he just opened up a room, and it was just a museum of 8-track tapes. I always wanted to visit that. I talked to him a few times online and stuff because it's just such a niche, small community of people that are obsessed with 8-track tapes. And this dude opened up a museum that I'm sure nobody went to for 7 years. So I'm serious. You see pictures of it, and there's no one in there. But it's just when he came on TV, I was like, holy crap, there's Buck. Wow. It'd be like if you were on TV all of a sudden. It's like I haven't met you, but I feel like I know you. It's like, oh, I know that guy. you know, and your friend's like, how? I'm like, I know I'm online. I'm a dork.
Yeah. Here we go. We got a question real quick from Dan Chalice. Who wins the Little Creatures Royal Rumble? Gremlins, Critters, or
Critter,
Hobgoblin? Yeah,
hobgoblin. Screw you.
look, Hobgoblins. Hobgoblins were such bad puppets in the movie. They literally just had sticks up their butts, and somebody just kind of waved them
Yeah.
around. The arm, they were
I
so
like when
stiff.
the one honks the horn.
Yeah. Gremlins are they meet you halfway too much. Critters are just they're dirty. You know,
Yeah.
they're dirty.
I mean, like, is he asking who would win in a bite, like a fight, like an all-out battle between the three, or
I would assume so. He says Royal Rumble, but I basically
the
wants to know
critters, man?
who he thinks. Yeah, who do we think's are the best? Critters are just nasty. Dan
Yeah, I
Chow
mean,
thinks Gremlins will where they can reproduce with water. Well, they ain't no water. It's a Royal Rumble.
yeah, dude. What are you bringing water into the mix for? Get out of here.
I want to bring this up real quick. We're gonna wrap up soon. So to stay on Joe Bob, because I had a blast. I remember I reached out to you and I was like, "Is this legit?" And you're like, "You got to get it." So I got Shudder and I haven't looked back since. Over the course of season 1, I was hoping to see all these movies come through, and he did some that I was really excited about. But the one movie that was my favorite experience, not only watching, but watching with Joe Bob, surprisingly, was a relatively newer film. I absolutely adore the film, and they're going into production on a part 2. Was Deathgasm. I just thought that was
That was awesome.
one of the most fun movies had ever seen. So, what was your? I guess a 2-part question. What were your thoughts on Deathgasm, and what was your favorite? What was your favorite Joe Bob movie review through season 1?
Deathgasm and Deathgasm. Yeah. Me too. Because I was excited because didn't it open up with Chud? Is that how the season opened?
Yes.
Yeah, and I remember I got out of work a little early so I could make it on time, and like it came out, I was like, oh man, Chud, and then he's kind of dissing it, but you know, everything he said, in my opinion, is just as true as it is wrong. But
he's got a personal vendetta against that film. There's something we don't know about that.
I think it's that it wasn't a big deal when it came out, and now it is years later to kids like our age. And I think he's like, you kids don't know. That movie sucked. You just think it's good because it's dated. And we're like, no, it's good. That's what I took from it.
Yeah, Deathgasm. Great experience. Was that your first time watching the movie?
Yes. And I think that's why it was my favorite of the season, because you got to see something. Because back on TNT, he wasn't playing old movies from the 80s. He was playing some kind of newer, low-budget movies. So you were watching like a new movie with him. And that was kind of, I don't want that every episode, but that was a really good experience. And then I remember, like, I think I got a hold of you afterwards. Sometimes we'll get a hold of each other afterwards. That's another thing too. Usually if I'm watching, I'll know you're probably watching at the same time. There's a whole kind of community feeling with Joe Bob right now. And I think it's probably one of the best things to happen to the horror community in a while. But yeah, that movie just kicked ass. I didn't know they were making a sequel, man. That's awesome.
I think the movie was a slow burn, but I think now it's actually reaching people. And there was an interesting story. I think the movie was funded locally or something, and they won short or something. But Deathgasm, I'd like to see Joe Bob do this because people trust him. I think Joe Bob's taken an effort to either go back and do movies that maybe people just haven't seen much or don't get the appreciation. I know he did The Changeling, and that was a movie I had seen, but when I watch it with him, I don't know why, but I watch it with more of an open arm. Yes. And I realized, Changeling and George C. Scott, I think that's his name. William Peter. I think it's George C. Scott. That's the actor. He was in the great Exorcist 3, one of my favorite horror movies of all time.
You know, I was saying this to my buddy the other day, who doesn't care, so it went over his head. But I was like, Joe Bob to me is the equivalent of listening to music on vinyl. If I put on a CD, I'm content to just go about my business and not pay attention. But with a vinyl record, there's a ritual of putting it on. There's a ritual of knowing it's going to end and you're going to have to flip it in 25 minutes. And Joe Bob gives you that. You want to pay attention to the movie because in 20 minutes he's coming back on and he's going to be talking. So you want to keep up.
Brilliant. Absolutely. I had a blast, man. I had never enjoyed the Phantasm series as much as ever.
Oh, that's my favorite so far. And let me tell you why, my friend. Phantasm is one of my favorite movies ever, to the point where I never watched the sequels because I was so afraid that they would tarnish my experience of the first one. So that was my first time ever seeing those sequels.
Right.
And it made me one, grateful that I held out because there's no other way I would have wanted to see them. But I think it made me like them. I love the sequels to Phantasm now. Those movies. That Phantasm did A Nightmare on Elm Street better. The sequel.
I understand what you say, and what's lovely about Phantasm, you know, it's almost like a David Lynch film, man, because you still really you still don't really understand what's going on in Phantasm.
It's very surreal.
You don't need to understand. That's what's scary, you know.
You're just on for the ride.
It's just brilliant movie.
Like when I think of like how Elm Street did it, every time you'd be in a dream sequence, has it ever tricked you? It never tricked me once.
Please no, because if anybody's in a boiler room,
dude.
You know.
But like with Phantasm, all of a sudden they're just in a new spot, and every once in a while you'll catch yourself and be like, "Wait, did I like blink for 5 minutes?" And that is such a cool feeling. You're so in it, but it's so out there that you can't even be in it all the way. So you're just along for the damn ride for those films.
And talking about soundtracks, obviously Phantasm, the original score, one of the horror movie soundtracks, underrated. Just a brilliant. And
everything about that movie is.
And this was a year after Halloween, so I mean, it's a pioneer in the world of horror, and it's funny.
I'm kicking myself because they just played it at the drive-in by me, like 5 hours of 35 millimeter, and I couldn't make it.
Real quick, Austin Wilcutt says Phantasm 3 and 4 underrated. I always liked Phantasm 3. I never watched Phantasm 4 until Joe Bob, and I liked it. You know, it was nice to see a bunch of unused footage from the first movie and try to basically use it to make a story out of part 4. Stronger 4. I thought, you know, I really do think that the Tall Man is good in 4. I think he's got some great stuff in 4. I'm a big fan of 2, man. I tell you, it was a shame that Joe Bob couldn't do part.
Yeah, I checked that out. Yeah, but it made me seek it out on my own. So that added to the experience in itself too.
Part 2 had some stuff in it, but I really like 3. I really do like 3. But I like
me too. 4 was it's not like I want to go out of my way to watch part 4, but it was very depressing.
It feels weird, you know, because first off, the scene was spread out. 4 had some really kick-ass stuff, though, man. I gotta say, I love the Evil Dead type scene when Reggie is out of the cop car and it's the maniac cop-looking guy fighting him.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That's a great class.
Oh hell yeah.
Real quick, Austin.
No, I don't mean depressing as in a disappointing. I mean it's a sad twist that it takes.
Yeah. Austin Wilcutt asks, why couldn't Joe Bob show Phantasm 2? He makes a joke about because
it's moral compass.
Yeah, they wrecked a car that was a classic car. But more than likely, you know, people. I don't know if anybody realizes Phantasm 2 is not owned by Universal like the rest of the movies. I think Phantasm, if that's even Universal who owns the Phantasm movies, I could be wrong. But basically, I know that Phantasm 2 is like Hellraiser 3. They're just oddities in a franchise that are owned by a different production company, and Phantasm 2 was Universal.
Just like we didn't get a box set with the original Child's Play for a very long time because MGM owns it, you know.
And Visited by Voices makes a lot of sense. He goes, yeah, Universal owns Phantasm 2 and asks more money to license. So yeah, that's probably the real reason that.
Well, I like that Joe Bob just made a joke to cover it up. To be frank, I love his humor.
Yeah, So,
Darcy followed me on Instagram, if you don't mind me gloating.
That's awesome. She's just gorgeous, man. She looks like a doll. Like she really does. Like she kind of has
Yeah.
like that porcelain doll look, but she's
Yeah.
she's a nice
cool.
She's a nice addition to the show. I wouldn't trade her for
No,
for
I absolutely love her. And what I like about it too is that he like kind of the whole point of that character was always kind of like sexist and eye candy. But like by the end of that season, when he had the prom for her and everything, it kind of just makes you love her. You're just like, oh, she's just so damn cool. You're like, you kind of get over sexualizing her, even though she's obviously very sexy and everything. And I like her just as much as Joe Bob now. Like, there's no replacing her, dude. Yeah.
So let's end with this. I'll ask you one more question before we wrap up. So what's your dream movie to have Joe Bob do an episode on?
Wow. Beavis and Butthead Do America. But it has to be a horror movie. Man, he's done. Oh, The Burning.
Wow, that'd be a good one.
The Burning.
I thought about that one. Yeah.
Oh, so that's like a local movie to me. It was filmed about 50 minutes from where I live. So that movie is very like, I watch it and it feels like here because it is here. Love that.
Do they do drive-in specials for that?
I wish. The place where I go to the drive, I have a drive-in about a mile from me, but there's one in Pennsylvania. Boy, if you and your wife can ever fly out, man, I'm telling you. Are you married to her?
Yes. I've been with her.
Oh, great. Yeah.
I've been with my wife. We've been together for God knows how long, almost 10 years. We've been married for a little over a year. So
I remember when she didn't live with you yet, and it was a long distance relationship.
Well, I don't know. We always lived in the same town. We
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
There was a moment where her parents moved away to Pennsylvania, and she almost went with them, and we were just going to break up, but she ended up staying. And
oh wow!
Yeah, that was the only.
What part of Pennsylvania, actually?
I don't remember, man. To be honest with you, because my father-in-law, her father, is an oil field man, and he got work up there, and he subsequently lost that position, and then got work again in Shreveport, which is about an hour from where I'm from, and then now he's working out in West Texas. So, and I got into the oil field for a while, but I got in, and then the bottom fell out, and there was no money to be made, and I was gone and broke. So, got out of that. So,
no, I was just hoping you'd maybe make a trip out to Pennsylvania sometime.
They're in Michigan now, though. That's where they live. But Bill, he still does work in Texas, but whenever he's off, he'll go home to Michigan. And I went to Michigan. That's where we go to see them now. So I had a blast.
I got lots of family in Michigan.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Anybody interested? My dream movie to see.
Please. Let's hear it.
I've got a couple. You know, I really would love to see Joe Bob do The Town That Dreaded Sundown. I love that movie. I think it's
he will, because he loves Texarkana movies.
Right, and that's close to home for me. So when I watch anything like that, I love the Texas Chainsaw Films, because I'm 30 minutes from. Excuse me, I'm like an hour, roughly like an hour from being on the Texas state line. So I do feel. Bit of a tech, like a little bit of tech. I think The Town That Dreaded Sundown would probably. I'd like to know more about the film. I'd like to learn about the film, because I can imagine that film pushed a lot of buttons. You know, and was
I would imagine so. And that's one of my favorite movies too. And it starts at a drive-in.
Yeah. So
does it not?
Yeah, I think it does. And there's like the voice that's talking.
Yeah.
The voice. Yeah. It kind of feels
It's the same narrator as The Legend of Boggy Creek. Do you ever notice that?
Yes, I love that guy's voice. And
me too.
I'd love to see him do what was that movie? Interestingly enough, this is an interesting one, but I'd really like to just hear what he has to say about Jeepers Creepers. I think that would be interesting. Based on
gosh, yeah. When we're talking about more modern movies, that'd be fantastic. Have you ever seen Funny Games?
No. That's on my list as well. That's another one.
I think maybe I'm the one that recommended it to you even back in the day. I would really like to see him
I really want to hear him talk about that movie. So the Burning and Funny Games. Let's hear more of yours, though. Yeah.
I'm trying to think. There's a lot of good movies.
No, there's not.
Right. I don't know, man. Just some interesting ones. Maybe I know he's some of my favorite movies. That's the thing. He's already talked about. Like I know he loves Return of the Living Dead, which is my #1 favorite movie ever.
I'm not a zombie movie guy.
But well, that's the
No.
funny thing. I've said that before. That's the thing. I said it. I did a roundtable video, and Tommy was in that. And I said I'm not a huge zombie movie fan, but that's the last thing I think about with Return of the Living Dead. It's just the movie that I love. It's the characters and it's the music.
That's the punk rock one, right?
Oh yeah, and that's what I am. I'm a punk
Right.
rocker, man. That's just
Look at me, man. Me too.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
No doubt.
But I'd like to just see Joe Bob do movies I haven't seen yet because you probably for every 3 of them that I may just really not be into, there'll be that one that I just see and I'm like, Jesus, that was amazing, like Deathgasm, you know. So
I would like him to do less foreign films and Japanese ones too. Like the Japanese go a little too far for me. Like if like what was that one that he watched there and they were having the dog have sex with the lady and stuff like.
Yeah, I watched that one too. I forget the name of it. You know,
dude, when I was younger, I would watch those types of horror exploitation movies, and it kind of felt like listening to a really bad death metal album or something. Like, wow, this is really hardcore. And now I'm just like, like, oh yeah, they had a lady have sex with a dog. I didn't need to see that. You know, I'm past it. I'm past it. I don't know. How did you feel about the lady having sex with the dog, Christian?
You know, I've seen Serbian film.
I don't need to. No.
Have you seen the movie?
No, I saw Irreversible, an Italian movie, and that's the movie that made me stop watching movies like that.
Yeah. Oh, I know another movie I'd like to watch Joe Bob do just to see what he would say about it. Because I'm actually a fan of the movie. I don't think I really don't think the movie is a exploitive movie or just a gag movie. It's the Human Centipede, the first Human Centipede. I'd love to see him because, dude, when I watch the Human Centipede, that movie is like a very high tension horror movie, not necessarily suspense, but just tension and like because here's the scariest part of the movie to me. Once you see the centipede, it's funny. I mean, it's ridiculous because he's out in the backyard and he's like, eat.
Feed her.
Part of Human Centipede is when the girls get captured by him, and that scene where they wake up and they're tied to the medical beds.
Yeah.
And he's explaining what he's about to do to him. That part.
Yeah, you're right. You're definitely right, man. Absolutely.
I remember watching that. I'm just watching. It's like, oh my god! Like, what is he about to do? And he's explaining it to him. That'd be an interesting movie to see Joe Bob talk about. And that's another movie I'd love to see I'd love to get some information on. So that first Human Centipede is a good movie.
What I think the Human Centipede is like a brilliant horror film disguised as a ridiculous gimmick.
Sure. But approached very well. I just thought
approached so well that it's like you're 20 minutes into it and you're like, well, I got this because it's the Human Centipede and they sew a bunch of people's ass to mouth. But by the end of the movie, I think everyone is like, damn.
Yeah, it caught me off guard, man, because I was expecting a ridiculous.
Yeah, we all checked it out for the same reason. We're all 8-year-old boys still at heart. Yeah, just happened to be a great movie.
Yeah, that'd be one I'd love to see him talk about, man. I really do, because I've seen the sequel. I haven't seen part 3. Sequel took a really weird direction. Basically,
the sequel I didn't finish because it was becoming one of those movies that I don't like to watch anymore. But I could tell it was really good.
It was interesting to me. I don't really know how I feel about the sequel. Number one, why did they film it in black and white? I don't know.
I liked that aspect of it, but I'm kind of an artsy dork.
Is that the approach? Was it to be artistic, or was it? I mean, it had
to always is, man.
Because there's no reason.
Even before color TV, it was just to be artsy.
I don't know. but I haven't seen part 3, which I'm sure they have to raise the stakes at.
Well, have you ever seen? I'm sure you have The Mist, the Stephen King one, where they're all in the grocery store.
Is that the one at the end where the
Yeah,
dad he kills him, then he realizes he doesn't? Yeah, so yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. I've only seen that movie in black and white because that's how the dude recommends it. My buddy, I guess, like if you got the right version of it back then, the bonus disc would just be the movie in black and white. Um, and I've seen clips of it in color, and I don't know if I would have liked it as much if I had seen it in color the first time. Sometimes I think it really does add a lot.
I think so. Yeah, I haven't watched a whole lot of black and white. A few films. I'm a big fan of The Wolfman. I love because it has like really cool effects for that time. What they did, it was probably painstaking to make all those adjustments.
They knew how to make black and white pop back then, for sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah.
I think Joe Bob even did a movie that was black and white, maybe the second to last week or so. But it was a new movie, but filmed in black and white. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember, but
yeah. What was that? I don't know. There's only been like 3 movies so far where it's not in this season, but the whole span since he's came back. One was like a lesbian vampire movie, and I've put that on 3 times, and I still can't tell you what the hell happens. I just end up getting distracted.
We talk real quick. I hate to cut you off, but I got to bring this movie up because if anybody in the chat saw this, I want to get their thoughts as well. You and me talked about the movie while you had watched it and you had said, "Hey, did you watch this yet?" It was the movie that actually had the gentleman from Manhunter, and he was the bad guy in RoboCop 2, and he was in Last Action Hero. I forget the guy's name, but he was that guy, and he was the butler or the father of this house. And it's the movie where the girl goes to babysit the house basically, and the whole movie is just this.
Oh, dude! That newer movie, the House of the Devil.
Brilliant,
absolutely brilliant. That was another. You know what? That one I might have enjoyed more than Deathgasm on a more horror level.
Me too. I forgot about it, but yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, dude, totally. Especially the build up when you really aren't sure what's like when her friend got killed. I didn't see it coming. Caught me off guard completely. And then, oh man, you know that they want her to order the pizza. That's all part of it. Oh, that was a suspense movie. But
the thing that what was so great about that was like it was the equivalent of just like standing in this room where you see this doorway with this pitch black room, and if the light's about to turn on, you're going to see what's in there or whatever. And they drug it out so long, but kept you interested the whole time. I'm telling you, I watched it on a Sunday night. And I remember I was telling my wife, I was like, let's just see what this is, because this is a newer movie, yada, yada. And Joe Bob was just like, this movie, buckle up because it's a tense movie. Man, I was enthralled. And I think, a lot of movies like that, there's no way the payoffs can really be as good as the buildup. And I don't know that one was as good, but it
no, because I don't remember how it ended. So it couldn't have been that great.
Basically, she gets to the top of the house where she's lured, and it's the cult ritual. And
yeah.
But I tell you, man, it was good. The ending was good enough.
It was good.
But that.
What's memorable about me was the build up to it, obviously, because that's what we started talking about first. You know what I like about that movie too? We've gone on a bit tonight about how we love horror movie soundtracks. That movie is such a good example of how lack thereof soundtrack can be just as brilliant.
Silence is deafening,
Oh, heck yes, man. That movie made you listen to the little pops and creaks in the room and stuff because you knew they mattered. Yeah, for a new movie, that was an awesome one. Right down to when the title card came on the screen, it was like, looked straight out of the 70s or something. Yes, I loved that one.
Man,
that was good.
Yeah, I'd like to see more from that guy. But I think interestingly enough, Joe Bob actually said the guy is not really a horror guy, but he made that movie either out of necessity or I don't remember what. But
Well, I'll tell you what, it got a VHS release.
Really?
Yes, because I heard about that movie quite a few years ago in the horror community, and it was like a thing like, oh, this movie's out on VHS, and a few people picked it up and whatnot. And I had not, I, I think I always assumed that it was like one of us in the community that made a video and put it on VHS, and it just had bomb cover art.
Yeah.
I didn't know that it was like, not to downplay people's projects, but I didn't realize it was a real movie. So that was really cool, and I'd love to own a copy of that on VHS too.
Yeah, man, what a killer movie. So I guess we'll end it on there. We've been going for a while. And I probably gotta get up early. The band's got a gig tomorrow, and we gotta load all this stuff up. But Shawn, dude, it has been fun, and I think the people liked you. They've kind of been having their own conversation in the chat, but I definitely want to bring you back on. And
I'd love to come back on. Yeah, I'll show off the collection sometime or something to you guys, and
we could do we'll have a more formal type episode where we could do a special, and we could look at maybe your top 10 favorite pieces of your collection and really dive in and all that stuff. So
let's give people just the sneak preview of the critter, just for the heck of it.
Wow.
There you go. Just a silhouette right now.
There it is. So all right, ladies and gentlemen in the chat, thank you guys for sticking with us. We actually went, I can't even tell you how long we went. We went pretty long, probably, but it's been absolutely a thrill, Shawn, and I appreciate you giving me your time.
No, I appreciate you, man. I consider you a friend. I hope we can actually meet in person someday and watch some movies and bull crap. That's cool.
Right. We'll make it happen. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being a part of the live stream, and thank you if you watch this video after the fact. Hopefully you learned something or just killed some time and had fun. So this is Christian Anahar with Shawn, and we are signing off. We love y'all, and good night.
Kill more Kreitz.